KPCA.LP, Petaluma, California. Hey, we're having technical difficulties right off the bat.
Is that a surprise?
Yeah,
I
hey.
don't know.
What's with this CD player? Come on.
I'm waiting
Come
for
on.
it to come on. Well, Matt, let's just jump in. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Jim.
Matt McGuire over there. Oh, there we go. We'll be quiet for a minute.
Got to set the mood here.
Yeah.
All right. Enough of
We're
that
back.
mood setting.
Yeah, there we go. We got the mood.
Yeah. Hey,
Oh.
hey, greetings, Petaluma.
Hello, Petaluma.
This is two Mooks and a mic. That's
Matt
Jim
McGuire
Thomas.
over there.
Jim Thomas over there.
And Matt McGuire over there.
And somebody's got a cold.
Yeah, I'm speaking through my mask,
Yeah.
my N95 mask that I
That's
used
right.
during the smoke thing, and I don't want to contaminate anyone, Matt. So I'm prophylactic. I'm a giant prophylactic.
We are responsible. The two Mooks are very responsible.
Well, I'm not sure how. No, we're not responsible for everything.
Let's
not go
Wait,
that
our
far.
behavior.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
That's
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jim.
Thank you.
Well, greetings, Petaluma. How's everybody? We hope everybody's fine. You know, we've been at this for well over a year now.
Has it been that long?
Mike. Yeah, I forget the exact
Wow.
date. I know it.
Yeah.
You know, we're curious sometimes. We send out the podcast link to 150, 200 people after the show
On YouTube.
Yeah. Where it's available. And looking back, we see some of those have getting listened to in the high single digits.
Yeah, like more than 3.
Yeah.
I think there's one that got 14.
Yeah, we did double digits
Yeah,
on one.
have
But,
time for
honestly, folks,
celebration.
we put a lot of effort into the show, and we hope you enjoy it. We hope it's worthwhile. But we're curious to know how many people actually listen to us. If there's just 5 or 10 of you, I don't know. Maybe, I got a garden. There's projects around the house.
We can all meet. We can meet at a coffee shop, man.
We could.
Make
And
it
then-
aqueous and have a pint or two.
That's right. And then we could just have a little rage fest and, face to face. But folks, seriously, if you're listening, how about doing us a favor and let us know? Send us an email, all right?
Yeah, please.
I'm going to give you the
Great.
email address here. And we would just be curious and thankful to know that anybody's listening.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
But really, seriously, we want to get a sense of how much penetration we have.
Whoa.
So get those pencils ready. The email address here is kpca@pca.tv.
Would you say that again, please?
kpca@pca.tv. Now, just put in there somewhere, two Mooks.
Like in the subject line.
Yeah, or in the body, and just say,
Yeah.
please forward this to two Mooks, and, let us know you're listening.
Yeah, even if you write, I don't listen, then we'll know you're listening. So you can even write, I'm not listening, I never have, and I never will. Thank you for listening.
That would be a very Mookish way to do it, and
It
we
would be.
we would be totally cool with that, right, Jim?
That's right, we would be. Yeah, it would be nice. So we're not just broadcasting somewhere out by the winds
ether.
of Venus
Yeah, exactly.
or something like that.
Well, once again, we're here to give you an update on things.
Yeah.
Well, the Mueller report was released this week, finally, after 2 years of...
We think it was.
We think it was. Yeah, we got Attorney General William Barr's 4-page summary, the Reader's Digest version of the Reader's Digest
Yeah,
version.
exactly. Cliff Notes. It's like they think it's from 300 to 1,000 page long, the Mueller report, and he did 4 pages?
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
And he and Assistant Attorney General Rod Rosenstein say that based on the report that there's not sufficient grounds to charge Trump, Donald J. Trump,
Twitler.
the bane of our existence, with obstruction of justice. Now, the report itself didn't say that. The report itself said this report does not exonerate him.
Thank you. And so Trump immediately says, no exoneration.
Yeah,
I didn't
total
exonerate.
exoneration. And
Yes, which means he once again is lying. That,
Yeah.
In fact, that Mueller very cleverly did not say that he's not exonerated by these things.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, many of us are disappointed that the Mueller report didn't have more indictments coming down.
Yeah.
To wit,
Yeah.
against Jared and Ivanka Kushner
Yeah.
and Don Trump Jr.
Yeah.
They look pretty guilty from here on the West Coast.
Yeah, they
with
sure
all
do.
Their,
Yeah.
finagling and dirty business tricks and things.
Yeah.
But of course, Mueller's no fool, and he would have immediately said, well, who's the first person that's going to get a pardon?
Is those guys.
Because
remember, he's working on the federal level, which means that Trump could pardon whoever he charges.
That's right. Any federal charges, Trump has the ability to pardon.
Right. But reading deeply into this, they say that Mueller actually is extremely clever because during the whole investigation, which is almost 2 years worth, he kept farming out and taking his indictments to state courts. And so these are courts to follow up with his investigation that Trump has no jurisdiction over.
That's right.
So anything they find that's wrong, Trump can't touch these people.
Exactly. Now, there are still a number of federal investigations going on. There's investigations going on against Trump's so-called, philanthropical organization. There's investigations against his the inauguration committee, and there's investigations on the campaign itself.
Oh man! So it's a lot.
Plus, there's investigations on real estate deals and whether or not he lied to banks to get loans.
Yeah.
I mean, the list is long.
It is long, and the SDNY, the Southern District of New York, they're the people to watch. And apparently, they just hired this highfalutin, high-powered lawyer whose specialty is bringing down mob bosses. So you know that they're onto something. They feel that there's something there to hire somebody who deals with the mob, and that's basically what Trump is doing.
Exactly. He's
a mob boss.
He looks like, acts like, smells like a...
So he must be a duck.
A duck, yes.
Or something that rhymes with a duck. Yes, a crook. That's it, a crook.
And in point of fact, the grand jury that was impaneled for the Mueller report is still impaneled and is still actively working.
I did not know that. That's pretty cool. So even though Mueller has said, there's my report, the gears keep turning.
Are continuing to grind. Now,
so don't give up, boys
and of course, the Republicans are taking a victory lap. They pulled a typically Democratic move in snatching the victory from the jaws of defeat by attacking the Affordable Care Act, which we're going to get to in a minute. But I did want to point out, Jim, that a recent CNN poll says that 56% of the public say that Trump was not exonerated of collusion with Russia in this report.
Not exonerated. I mean, he still could be guilty of collusion.
And 57% of the public think that Congress should hold hearings to investigate the report's findings. That's it's not a huge majority, but it's definitely strong.
But you know what really pisses me off or gets my dander up in a huff is Kellyanne Conway was hugging Sarah Huckabee Sanders and saying, look, we're colluding.
Yuck.
We're colluding.
Ew.
And it's just crap like that. It's like, this is bully behavior.
Oh, it is bully behavior. In fact, it's funny you mentioned that name. The governor of Puerto Rico, who's been being abused by Trump, just
ignored.
as a quick side note, says, if the bully comes to me, I'm going to punch him in the mouth.
I love that. Yes.
little taste of Donnie's own medicine, right? Because Trump is saying, what it was on Hannity or one of those god-awful things. He was saying, I think, submachine guns would be better at, preventing immigrants from coming here than a wall.
He said that?
Something to that effect, and it's like one more incitement to violence.
Yes, there you go.
So here, before we get to the ACA issue, Trump, of course, has to have a rally in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is red country. But I just want to read a couple of his quotes because it's just unbelievable.
This is crazy.
He's saying
crazy
that he's attacking the Democrats and Representative Adam Schiff, who oversees the House Intelligence Committee.
My hero of the week.
People who are calling for investigations. He says they're on artificial respirators right now. They're giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Little pencil neck Adam Schiff.
Unbelievable.
He's got the smallest, thinnest neck I've ever seen.
Matt, I think that Trump is talking about himself.
I think he looked down the mirror and sucked in his gut, and that's what he saw.
Oh man, a little neck.
Really. And then he goes, the Democrats need to decide whether they will continue to defraud the public with ridiculous bull. SHIT, he said, and so
our president, boys and girls,
but it gets worse.
President.
I mean, you'd think like this guy's the president of the United States.
Thank you. Yes.
And
where's the dignity?
Does he have any? No. They're not a shred.
No.
He goes on to say, I'm president, and they're not. They came, he says, they came and they didn't even know these people existed. I don't know what he's talking about there. But he says, I have a better education than them.
Yeah.
I'm smarter than them.
That's true.
I went to better schools than them. much more beautiful house,
Yeah.
much more beautiful everything. It's
Well,
like, really?
I guess. Well, we're
I don't
better.
think so.
We are better Mooks than he is. man.
That's right.
The two Mooks are much better than he is.
Well, he's just, I mean, what a clown. But so they basically have, shot themselves in the foot because there's a right-wing Texas judge
Yeah.
who recently ruled that the Affordable Care Act is 100% unconstitutional.
Not just the part that people are forced to pay to be in it. That
Right.
part was already shot down. But this guy did a reading that everything with the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So everything has to go.
Yeah, his reasoning was that because in the billionaire tax giveaway, Trump actually, reduced the tax penalty to zero for
right.
not signing up for health
Yeah.
care. And so therefore, since there's no penalty, then Congress no longer has, the taxing authority in this case.
Right.
Well, it's like, where's the law? This guy's an idiot.
He is an idiot. He's a partisan hack.
That's like saying, okay, Congress made a ruling and they're never going to change their mind. That's like saying, they gave up their right, to tax, and
Yeah.
they didn't. They
Yeah.
just didn't. They can change it. Another Congress can fix that.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
then where does this leave this guy? But of course, so what happens? So Trump, with advice from Mick Mulvaney, who was a
Little round glasses, pencil neck.
Yeah, former South Carolina right-wing rabid congressman
Who
who
apparently
hates,
is running for the governorship of.
and
yeah.
he's always hated Obama. He's
Yes.
always been trying to kill the
And doesn't he have
Affordable
like
Care Act.
3 jobs?
He actually advised Trump
Yeah.
to back, have the Department of Justice back this Texas judge. So
Unbelievable.
Trump does. Now,
Yeah.
a bunch of Republicans, the leadership, are freaking out.
I love it, Matt.
Yeah.
I love it because they're playing right into the Democrats' hand. This is a wonderful
Exactly.
thing just before the election. Trump wants to destroy the ACA. Don't forget, the last time they tried to do that, we flipped the Democrats.
That's
flipped
right.
the House.
And, they, this is just crazy stupid on their part.
It's crazy.
And Trump, listen to this quote. He says, the Republican Party will soon be known as the party of health care. You watch.
Yeah, have no health care.
Yeah, health care destruction. I mean, they haven't come up with it. They've had 8 years of control
right.
of Congress and
That's
haven't
right.
come up with a single thing that comes close to a rational
Everything
program.
they tried to strip away was defeated in the courts.
Exactly.
And they can't come up with anything. It's the gang that can't shoot straight.
Yeah. And here's what Nancy Pelosi says. She says, last night in federal court, the Justice Department of the Trump administration, you'd think they'd have more to do, decided to not only try to destroy protections for pre-existing conditions, but to tear down every last benefit and protection the ACA affords. The GOP will never stop trying to destroy the affordable health care of America's families.
Matt, it boggles the mind why they're
Doesn't
even
it?
doing this. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's going against the people who need it the most.
Yeah.
You'd think that the Republicans would go, "Gee, you need health care. We will support it. We
Yeah.
will support the ACA.
Well,
we'll
and-
call it something else."
And they were, as recently a couple months ago saying, we support protecting people with pre-existing conditions.
anymore.
So if they destroy the Affordable Care Act, 18 million people or more will immediately lose their health care.
That's right.
100 million people is estimated to have pre-existing conditions.
Wow.
100 million people.
100 million.
Almost a third of the country, right?
Wow.
So, it's like...
And they remove the caps on how much
Lifetime
caps on how much you'll have to pay. They'll
Yeah.
remove it, so you'll be socked for money from now until you die,
Exactly.
and maybe your heirs.
And
too.
in the meantime, another judge just ruled that one of the Trump's effort to allow small businesses to gang together and buy junk insurance
That's right. They're going to group
policies.
together to have end run around ACA.
Yeah, that says you don't have to cover mental health. You don't have to cover,
Don't have to cover nothing.
pre-screening.
Here's a Band-Aid.
Yeah, it's like junk. The judge says no. You can't do that.
Ha, ha,
Yeah.
ha.
So now these guys are doubling
Now
down.
he's got a pencil neck.
You geek.
Geek.
So now these guys are doubling down. It's like, okay, so in the polling in the midterm elections, healthcare was the highest by far
Yes.
polled issue that people were voting
That was
on.
number one. Number two was immigration.
Yeah.
And Mitch McConnell
Well,
is saying...
it was like 41% said healthcare
is
and
most important.
23%
That's right.
said
so
immigration.
like half of that.
Yeah.
And Mitch McConnell is saying to Trump, "This is all yours. I'm not going to touch it." He tried to do this thing, and failed miserably.
That's right. So, this rekindles a fight that, was just great for the Democrats. And
so, Matt, maybe it's actually a good thing that Trump's in office because it's going to galvanize galvanize the Democrats against the Republicans, and maybe we can actually make them so small we can drown them in a bathtub or even a bucket of water.
I like that image.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's,
like what they did in
that is
California.
possible. I mean, it's like if we're going to get to universal health care or Medicare for all, or, even if you just enhance the Affordable Care Act by, the things that the Democrats are pursuing right now, that's that is potentially the path to get there.
So
the Republicans push things so far out of shape that everybody just reacts so strongly that the net result is we actually get something done.
Thank you. And the Democrats, to their cleverness and to their credit, are not going after universal health care at the moment. They want to shore up the ACA first and then possibly talk about that. And the reason why, it's very smart, the reason why there's so many different versions of universal health care. What does it mean? Medicare for all or single payer or...
and who supports what?
And who knows what they mean? You would, Matt, but not me. I just go like, well, I don't know. So
I'd have to read up on it, but it's true. I mean, certainly nobody in the Democratic Party is against incremental improvements of the ACA.
Thank you. No, we can't just do it all at once, perhaps.
Many of us would love to see, a true transitional change.
Right, and maybe there'll be a double track, having still in private insurance as well as like a universal type of health care. Like Medicare for all.
Single-payer private insurance does work in some countries. Medicare for all works in some countries. There's a number of versions that work in truly civilized Western countries.
We had to go, Phyllis and I were flying, and we were in Geneva, and we had to go to a hospital. And we went to a hospital, and we walked in, and they said, "You are welcome here, but it's a private hospital." And we said, "What does that mean?" They said, "You'll be paying much more right out of your pocket than if you go to this other hospital, which is paid for by the state."
Oh, yeah.
So we went to the one with the state.
Uh-huh.
And they were great. They were fabulous, and they said, "Okay, we will bill you," which is pretty darn trusting.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, and I pay them.
Yeah, right on.
I used to be a Boy Scout a long time ago before I was thrown out.
You could be one again if you were still a boy.
Let's move on.
All right. So Jim, the Senate McConnell did have a vote on the Green New Deal.
Yeah. Okay.
And this was his effort to try to undercut the Democratic
to embarrass them.
Momentum. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Did it work?
make it. And well, I don't think so. So the Democrats all voted present. 43 of them. Now I have to say that 4 Democrats voted against it with the Republicans.
So those Democrats who voted against it, probably are in the purple states, and they're afraid of their constituents.
Yes.
They want to keep their jobs.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but they did.
But
it is what it is,
political
right?
reality.
Right.
At the same time, every one of the Democratic presidential candidates is saying they support the Green New Deal.
Good.
And so this was an effort to blunt the Republicans. But what was great that came out of this was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
AOC, our
just
hero.
ripped on these clowns. So, and Mike Lee, who's just a right-wing Republican.
He's a crazy man.
From North Carolina, I think
Aren't
it
they
is.
all kind of
Or no,
crazy?
South Carolina. He shows pictures of Ronald Reagan with a machine gun riding a dinosaur.
A Velociraptor.
A bunch of babies.
Holding a
and,
flag.
Saying, this has got as much to do with, and she just was like, she just rips on them. And
Which you can see on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's fabulous because she speaks off the top of her head.
She's eloquent.
Smart.
And
yes.
she runs through. She says, if this guy can be senator, you can do anything. And, she basically said, hey, try reading the information first, right?
Right.
And it's got nothing to do. No, we're not going to take away your cows. We're not going to take away your cars.
You can't have ice cream. That's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And in fact, the Green New Deal is just kind of a manifesto. It's a guide of what they want to do. It's not a law.
Yeah,
it's just suggestions.
It's aims and goals, right?
Thank you.
But she just slammed the Republicans for claiming that the desire for health insurance, clean water, and clean air is elitist.
Right.
And that is so
Elitist,
true.
that's right.
Whenever the Republicans want to try to shut something down, it's elitist.
Right.
Well, who's the biggest elitist in the world? It's the right-wing Republicans,
Yeah,
right?
that's very true. Yeah, and Trump's the leader of the elitists.
Yeah, so the Democrats voted present to keep the issue growing and developing so they can actually develop actual policies out of, what is now a non-binding, set of goals.
And Matt, by voting present, if they had voted for, then the Republicans could have tarred them by saying they're for this ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
But by voting present, it's much slipperier to try to pin them down.
Right.
Very smart.
But in the meantime, then AOC is saying, look, you guys are saying, where's the money going to come from? It's so expensive. She goes, you're going to pay for it anyway.
Right.
When the oceans, rise 10 feet, what do you think that's going to cost?
Right. Instead of being proactive, it's going to be after the fact.
Yeah, exactly.
And look what's happening in the Midwest.
Yeah, floods there. And what's going to happen when that's impacting your food supply, right?
Okay, so already in the Midwest, the farmers, their grain is stored in elevators. And once it's out of the field in the elevators, it's no longer insured.
That's right.
And all those elevators now are flooded, which means the crops will rot or mold unusable.
Yep.
Plus the flooding, the dikes are breaking, the flooding of the farmland, basically it's unusable. And a lot of farmers are saying, look, we already are underwater financially, and this is going to just kill
now
us.
Literally. And a lot of that flood water is highly toxic because gasoline tanks get flooded.
Pig manure. Cow manure.
Human manure.
Human manure.
Well, human poop.
Yeah.
I think we call it in our case, but
I do. Night soil.
Night soil, that's right. So all that makes it toxic, and it takes years to rehabilitate those kinds of fields.
It's like the wet version of the Dust Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then the Rocky Mountain Institute, highly reputable, says that deep decarbonization, the pursuit of deep decarbonization, will create millions of jobs. And right off the bat, it's going to save like $5 trillion. Other people say it's going to save as much as $500 trillion.
$500 trillion?
$500 trillion.
This is people going into solar, wind, wave generation.
Well, and this is just talking about avoiding the cost of the things we're talking about right now, the damage, the destruction, oceans rising, floods,
so
hurricanes.
Being proactive, in other words.
Exactly.
Good.
And also that pursuing decarbonization the Rocky Mountain Institute says would grow the economy 2.5 times faster than what it's doing now, And then NASA says
NASA, the government organization with space.
Yep, National
Not NASA.
Agency of Space.
That's it. National Society of Experts on Space.
That's it.
Of actualized space people.
It's something like that.
Man, we are so bad.
Yeah, it is. You're just so used to NASA,
That's it, NASA.
All right, NASA. They said the economy lost $91 billion to climate disruption so far.
Holy cow.
This is where others say it might be as high as $500 billion.
So
or 2% of the gross domestic product.
So they're being cautious in what they're saying.
Yeah. And then, the Republicans also slam the Democrats because they say they want social and racial equity in the Green New Deal. And it's like, well, what's that got to do anything? Well, the truth of the matter is that there's evidence that higher income disparity equals, higher carbon pollution. That is to say that poorer communities bear the brunt of being next to refineries and, pesticide factories.
Thank you.
And chemical,
like the
plants.
Safeway gas station that's slated to go in next to an elementary school, and also a poor neighborhood, a low-income neighborhood.
Yeah.
Here in
town.
I
mean, that's why social and racial equity are part of the Green New Deal. The poor bear the burden, and besides which, how stupid are we? It's like, is it time to get over our our gasoline and addiction?
Matt, it is difficult to do. I was reading today or yesterday that the Chevy Bolt, the all-electric car, is about to run out of their government subsidies.
The tax credits.
That's right, the tax credits. And when they do, GM says we're not going to lower the price of our car the way Tesla has done. It's going to be up to the dealers to haggle. And arguments are, well, why even buy it then if you're not supporting it? So a lot of people are going to be going to Tesla, where they can get a car that's actually cheaper than the Bolt and get software updates over the air and supercharging network.
Well, so but the tax credits are going to be applied the same to the Chevy Bolt as they are to the Tesla. So as of now, the Tesla, it's instead of $7,500, it's half of that.
That's right, $37.50.
Yeah, and so that's going to happen to the Bolt when they sell.
That's right,
200,000 units,
which is the end of this month, apparently.
Is that right? Okay, so I mean, the Bolt is probably still going to be a little cheaper than the Tesla unless that drop in Tesla price is enough to make up for that.
Well, yes, they say the Tesla actually is the $35,000 Tesla has come out, so that's
Except
cheaper than the Bolt.
you still can't get it.
Well, you can get it.
You can order it.
You can get it in any color but black, or any color as long as it's black.
As
is
long
one
as
of them, right? And they're bare bones, but you still can get one, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You can order one. They're not
You
delivering
can order
them yet.
one. That's right. You're on the waiting list, aren't you?
Well, actually, I got off because I love my Bolt. But here's the thing. So, like talking about the environment, we're in dire straits. It's estimated that the internet alone will consume a fifth of the world's electricity by 2025.
That's crazy.
That's 6 years.
That's
20% of
lifetime.
all of electricity. And people are saying, if you want to make an improvement to the economy, get off your social media.
Thank you. Turn off your computer once in a while. Go outside.
Yeah, don't use that thing.
Yeah.
Skip it.
Skip it.
Since the rise of human civilization, 83% of all wild mammals have been eliminated by people.
Okay, this is really depressing.
Extinction rates are currently up to 1,000 times higher than pre-human levels.
This is really even more depressing.
Isn't this bad?
Yes, it's bad.
So this is just.
Is there more bad stuff?
Yeah, there is. I mean,
sock it to me, Matt.
Well, this is just a heads up. I mean, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, warned that to meet the agreed target of preventing global warming of more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, global greenhouse gas emissions would need to fall to zero within 30 years.
Oh, man. Well, that's what the Green New Deal is talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
30 years.
If every nation in the world met its reduction commitments, which nobody expects to happen, the planet's temperature will still rise by 3 degrees Celsius. It's baked in, no pun intended.
Yeah, right.
The last time the world was 3 degrees warmer than now was during the mid-Pliocene epoch about 3 million years ago. Now, you can't tell me that that's not a radical
No, we are really
change.
accelerating things. Well, so, Matt, with all this doom and gloom, there has to be a silver lining.
Well, what's interesting, I'm quoting from an article from the winter 2018 Orion magazine. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. What is it? People.
It's by a guy named Paul Kingsnorth.
What is underneath Orion? It says something. People.
It says people and nature.
People and nature. Okay, good.
But he's saying in here, that when he was growing up, he thought the world was divided into good people and bad people, and he was a good one. But then it's not that simple. And then he realized that he thought it was divided into people who were informed and those not informed.
Okay, ignorant and educated.
He thought he was one of the informed. But then, ultimately, he's changed again. He's come to the conclusion that he says, now I think that humans like ease, material comfort, entertainment, and conformity, and they do not like anyone who threatens to take these things away.
Well, I Matt, that's true. I think that's true, don't you?
He says, I think that even the people who say these things should be taken away in order to prevent the collapse of life on Earth do not really mean it. So he points out in this article that, despite the Paris Accord, and of course there was the, what was the one in 2009 that, and going back before that Clinton wouldn't sign. I mean, this stuff goes back for years. And
they just don't want to change the lifestyle.
And OAC was pointing out that, this was brought up, around she's just turning 30, and this stuff has been on the table since before she was born, and there's been no action.
No action.
But this guy in this article points out, he says, the only time that we've actually succeeded in bringing down the destruction of the, natural earth and things that support us is 2 times. Once was when the Soviet Union collapsed, and the other time was in 2008 when the world economy came close to collapsing. So now he's saying, really, the only way we're going to do this is if you stop feeding the constant growth, the capitalist growth machine.
Yeah. So it sounds like the conclusion is we have to change our attitude, and we got to do it fast. And Matt, not just doing climate, but what about gun control? Controlling the proliferation of guns in this country.
Well, that's an important
Nothing's been
issue.
done since all of that, right?
I mean, but in the sense, the context of the whole world and the environment and stuff,
I agree.
If it's another, 3 degrees Celsius hotter, and your guns are not going to be, they'll melt in your hand.
You can shoot the icebergs.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, Matt. It's a depressing thing, but I think that people like OAC are saying, not just being not an alarmist, but pointing out the severity of this. And now we got to recognize it first, and then second, we can figure out what to do about it.
Well,
and
that's
the
the thing.
Republicans are not recognizing
Yeah,
it.
and this is why I say Donald Trump is a threat to the existence of the human race, because
Thank
he and
you.
his crooked minions are doing everything they can to continue to promote
Yep.
coal and gas and
As much money as
fracking
possible.
and such and just completely ignoring these critical
Yeah.
impacts, right?
Yeah, because they want to get as much money, and his cronies
Yeah.
make them as rich as possible as well.
And they're greedy and they are corrupt.
So they can work on the Trump dynasty, which
Yeah.
Ivanka and Ivanka and Don Jr. are both apparently vying for a replacement to Trump as the president.
Oh, God.
And apparently Ivanka has been skirting around the country at these kind of rallies, sort of letting people know who she is. And if Don Jr. gets a little bit more attention, this is a tell-all book I read about, she has a hissy fit.
No.
So they're really fighting to try to see who's going to be the next president,
Oh,
the next
God.
Trump.
Yeah, that's a nauseating thought.
It is a
Well,
nauseating
and
thought.
speaking of corruption, I mean, then you've got the whole Boeing, 737
aye,
MAX
aye.
8 jet. And
Yeah.
so now, I mean, Boeing has finally copped to the fact that the software problem, there is a software problem,
Yep.
and they're going to be adding a second sensor, which, the problem of stalling is based on one sensor. That sensor goes bad, and then the plane starts, nose diving and
Oscillating.
Well,
Yeah.
because the pilots keep trying to pull the
pull it
nose
up,
up,
right.
and it keeps pushing it down very aggressively,
And
and
it's-
that's what likely caused the two planes to crash.
Correct, and it happens so fast, and the plane actually accelerates. And
So-
we were talking about whether it's possible to disengage it, and I did read a story where one of the 737s was starting to do that, but they happened to have a third pilot who was hitching a ride in the cockpit, and he was able to talk to the pilot and co-pilot and get them to disengage the system. But it doesn't sound like it's that easy to do or that intuitive to do.
Well, and so Boeing is saying they're going to put a second sensor in, and then they'll also have what they call a disagreement light. So if one sensor says one thing and the other says the other, this other light comes on. And this
We need one
basically-
here. We need a disagreement light between us. And so if you disagree with me and I disagree with you, we'll just have dead airspace. We'll play music.
No. Time for me to cut your mic.
There we go. Disagreement number one.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's easy.
Turn me back on. There we go.
But no, it will make it a lot easier for the pilots to, overcome this problem. And but both Boeing and the FAA, Federal Aeronautics Administration, are like on the defensive because the FAA was the last, national agency to ground the jets. And of course, this is because Trump is meeting with Boeing's CEO while they were still flying,
right.
who I'm sure
Thank
said,
you.
no, don't ground our jets.
And he goes,
it
I
looks
won't.
bad.
So Dana Milbank of the Washington Post says, this is what happens when corporations run the government. The FAA's acting head is an ex-vice president of the Aerospace Industries
That's right.
Association, and Trump's nominee to run the agency is a former Delta Airlines executive. In Trump's broader corporatocracy, fully 350 former lobbyists have worked, or have been tapped to work in the administration. These industry insiders have pushed deregulation, which boosts their old boss's profits at the expense of our safety.
Exactly. And
Wow.
Senator Richard Blumenthal says the FAA decided to do safety on the cheap, which is neither cheap nor safe.
No.
And he says the FAA put the fox in charge of the henhouse. Now,
That's right.
for our listeners, the way this has worked is that the FAA has allowed the manufacturer, in this case Boeing, to be in charge of certifying that they are in compliance with the FAA regulations. Now, the FAA is saying, we don't have the budget. We'd have to hire 10,000 people. Well, the Republicans are notorious for gutting the budgets of regulatory agencies, so just exactly the thing you just quoted,
Dana
which
Milbank
is
said.
to allow the corporations to have their way. And this is how it comes out, right?
Right. And so pilots who were being trained on the 737, they were given 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes on an iPad to learn how to work it.
And in fact, the FAA did not flag this particular software change as something that needed to be trained on or to be aware of, which this is why the FAA is now looking really bad. And their inspector general has just been ripping on them, going, same thing.
Good.
Fox has guarding the hen house.
Yeah, and the FAA used to be the leader in the world for airline safety, but the fact that they were the last to ground these jets,
now
it's tarnished now.
And
Thank you, Trump.
So
Wrote another thing.
Do you trust trust corporations. Well, I certainly don't trust corporations when it comes to herbicides. Do you?
No, I don't. But, justice is done, Matt, and it happened here in Sonoma County, and it's fantastic. Give us the details.
Okay, so a Department of a second guilty verdict was ruled on Monsanto for their Roundup product.
Yeah.
The glyphosate, the jury came back and said that is clearly, we think, carcinogenic. And the guy's got, this is the second guy who's got cancer from using it for 30 years.
Yep.
They penalized him $80 million, $5 million in for the guy, and $75 million in punitive damages.
Good.
So, this is a bellwether trial because this particular judge is in charge of hundreds of lawsuits against Monsanto. And basically, Monsanto's been responsible for 40 years of corporate malfeasance and public manipulation,
Right.
the guy's attorney says, and I agree with that. I think it's true.
I did too.
They basically saying, oh, well, every scientific, study says that it is harmless. Every scientific study that you paid for,
right? They had used their own scientists,
or that you blackballed scientists who came out with things that disagreed with what you want. There's plenty of documentation that shows that they have manipulated those scientific studies to get the answer they want.
Absolutely.
And once again, this is how things come out when you let corporations run the show.
That's right.
So in this case, now if this judge, if this opens the floodgates on, this product, maybe we can be rid of it. And one less toxic poison, because this is all the stuff that's like, you've got your neonicotinoid, pesticides and things that are killing off the bees. 40% of insects are basically threatened with disappearing.
And when those things gone, there goes our crops. There goes our food because they pollinate everything. Yeah, they said about Roundup that once you sprayed it, you let it dry and it was safe. Monsanto also was the same company that sold those seeds, genetically modified seeds that would not propagate. So you had to buy new seeds every year, and they were
Roundup ready. You could use all the more poison on them.
So what happened was there was a farmer who sued them because his property was next to a Monsanto property, and the winds blew his seeds over there, and he refused to use their seeds, pay the use of the seeds, and they brought him to court. And this was in Canada, it happened, and I think he won.
No, I think they won.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Seriously?
But in the meantime, what's happened is that all the weeds around there have become super powerful, and so then they say, well, you just have to add more.
You have to, just add more stuff to it.
It's like being a junkie, So,
she's a weed junkie, man.
Yeah.
Not cool.
Well, Jim, there is a little bit of good news out there. So
let's hear it.
Yeah, well,
Jeez.
one thing is McDonald's is not going to fight against people who are battling to get a living wage of $15 an hour anymore.
Yay.
They sent a letter to the National Restaurant Association saying we're not going to participate or pay for, the association to fight against that fight.
Good.
And that's a big change. McDonald's, a huge
major employer,
fast food,
yeah.
So
good.
that's a nice bit. And here's something I was very pleased to read.
Then I got a couple.
Talking about the environment, Australia has enough solar, wind, and energy storage projects built or ready to built or deployed or planned to be able to provide 100% renewable energy for that continent, that country, by the year 2030.
Now, is this 100% a renewable energy 24/7?
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Eliminate all non-renewable. Yeah.
Gosh,
so when Dianne Feinstein or Republicans say, Green New Deal, it can't be done.
How are you going to do
it? Well, Australia's doing it. Now, granted, their population's much smaller, but certainly, it's now in most cases, both wind and solar are competitive and cheaper.
The prices are going much
than
much
oil
down.
And gas.
Okay, a West Virginia industry, Matt. West Virginia industry group has successfully fought new clean water standards for the state, partly by arguing that because so many state residents are obese, their bodies can handle more pollution from coal and chemical plants. The new EPA-backed regulations don't account for several factors, including body weight, said the West Virginia Manufacturers Association. So if you're large and you live in West Virginia, well, you can absorb more pollutants, so they say.
So we all become repositories of pollution.
Yeah, I think
Clean
so.
the environment by getting fat and absorb.
Just absorb it. Jesus. All right, how about this? A Missouri state representative, Andrew McDaniel, recently introduced a bill that would require adults ages 18 to 35 to own at least one AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. After the shooting massacre in New Zealand, the Republican lawmaker clarified that the McDaniel Militia Act was an attempt to provoke the other side and to show that our Second Amendment rights are under attack. He said he doesn't actually support mandates. So there's a lot to go, man. A lot of distance to go to educate some people, huh?
A federal judge ruled recently that the work requirements that Arkansas and Kentucky imposed on Medicaid recipients, Medicaid, of course, being the health care for low-income people, are unconstitutional. James Boasberg, not surprising, an Obama appointee of the D.C. District Court, blocked the move to make these people go out and work to get their health care.
Good.
Just in the period that they've imposed that, 18,000 people lost their coverage. Since last summer, 18,000 people lost their health care.
That's a lot.
And now the Trump administration is still allowing 8 states to require work from recipients, and 7 more are asking to be allowed. And the Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar was ruled as arbitrary and capricious by the judge. And Seema Verma, the head of Medicaid, who's going, well, we're trying to lift these people out of poverty by, flogging them.
Yeah, why don't we have debtor's prison?
The judge says that they did not adequately prove that this would actually help people and help provide medical assistance to citizens, which is a central, Medicaid goal. So,
thank you. Not everybody can work and they need medical
And Jim, this is the second time this judge ruled this. He told these Kentucky and Arkansas before, he says, hey, your program is crap, it's unconstitutional, fix it. They came back and basically presented the same thing.
This is the state that Mitch McConnell represents.
Yeah.
So are you surprised?
Yeah, exactly. And, so it's like, you're poor, and so maybe you're able-bodied, but, this would require 80 hours a month for people over 19 to get their medical.
Wow.
So that's like half. So, 40-hour work week, that's 2 weeks. So that's
half a month.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is like this is just vicious, the Republicans.
It is terrible. Well, this is vicious too, Matt. And an Alabama buffet exploded into a brawl as diners fought over a tray of snow crab legs. The wild melee erupted after disgruntled patrons waited 20 minutes for fresh crab legs and then competed to pile their plates with the delicacies. Everyone was saying, she cut me in line. He cut me in line. I was here first, said police officer Gerald Johnson. 2 diners actually began fencing with crab tongs as others wrestled. Plates were shattered everywhere, Johnson said. 2 diners were arrested and 1 sustained minor injuries. So, Matt, be polite when you eat your crab legs, please.
Good Lord. I'd say those were a bunch of crabby people.
Yeah, they were. And leggy, too. Only take 2 legs.
That's right.
That's the limit.
Don't be greedy.
Don't be a pig.
Really.
Unless you live in Arkansas.
So, Jim,
West Virginia.
The Charlottesville car killer, remember the guy that drove into the crowd of peaceful protesters who were protesting the neo-Nazi
Heather Heyer, I think her name was, right?
What's that?
The woman who was killed, Heather Heyer.
Yeah, Heather Heyer was the victim. Yeah. He had already been convicted of murder on the state level, but he pled guilty to 29 of 30 counts of federal hate crimes, murder, injuring dozens. And this was in the Unite the Right rally in 2017. Now, what's, I think, really great about this is that 30th count that they dropped against him was the one that would have made him eligible for the death penalty. Now, frankly, this guy gets to spend the rest of his life in prison thinking about what he did, and I personally think that is a more equitable punishment for the guy than
It's just killing him.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's let him stew about it. And thank you, Gavin Newsom, for doing the same thing.
Regarding the death penalty in California.
The death penalty, that's correct.
Yeah, speaking of Newsom.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Yeah,
on the bad side, or possibly bad, He's declared a statewide emergency regarding the fire threat. Now, that's not bad.
No, that's
but
good.
He's fast-tracking 35 CAL FIRE projects to allow them to log, thin,
Clear the brush.
Right.
Now,
it's one thing to take out the smaller trees and the brush, so you've got a clear understory.
Oh, here comes the bad stuff.
But CAL FIRE has historically been the handmaiden to the logging industry and used every opportunity, like when fires come through, instead of letting, what burned naturally biodegrade and
which it needs to burn.
Regenerate.
Right, that's right, regenerate.
It's like, take out all those logs and sell them,
Burning's bad.
And strip mine, basically. So, one of the projects around here is going to be 36,000 acres, and there's going to be a 14-mile fire break.
Wow.
They are going to, I think what is good out of this is there's going to be some prescribed burns.
Yeah,
That's good. But, he's allowing CAL FIRE to bypass CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act.
Yeah, I'm not sure
and that's
good.
not so good. In fact, the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation, an environmental group, says that CAL FIRE is doubling down on failed strategies of the past rather than new thinking.
Okay.
Studies have showed that ember-proof vents, clearing a space 100 feet around buildings, fire-resistant roofs and things, work much better. And in fact, in the La Tuna fire in L.A., in Southern California area, 99% of the structures survived using those techniques.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
you can fireproof your dwelling.
You can certainly make it much more fire safe.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. We'll see how CAL FIRE rolls out and does this.
I'd like to know Gavin Newsom's argument why he did this.
Well,
I'm sure he would.
His argument was that there is a tremendous sense of urgency because 5 people got killed in the fires.
That's right, and hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage, if not millions.
Hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions.
Yes, actually.
And didn't he also pull the troops from the border, the National Guard, and have them come up to help?
So they're going to do some fire training. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
That's all good.
And also a bit of good news about Gavin Newsom is that he's actually going to go to El Salvador.
I like that.
Because Trump is threatening to close the southern border again. He's whining that Mexico and Central American countries are not doing enough to stop migrants, right? Well, it's interesting because, and there has been a surge in migrants. They're saying something like 55,000 in March families have come across the border, and Customs and Border Patrol is just,
they're overwhelmed,
arresting them, then just letting them go.
Yeah, because they can't house them. They can't put them anywhere.
Exactly, and that's up 500% from a year ago.
Didn't they also arrest them and then make them promise that they come back for their court hearing?
Yeah, that they're letting them go on their own recognizance.
And a lot of times before all this debacle happened, this is what they would do, and the people 90-some% would come back.
93% or something. Yeah,
that's really good.
Now these numbers are still way below the peak of about 10 years ago or so. But Trump is whining that Honduras and Guatemala, El Salvador are misusing U.S. funds to improve conditions on the ground in those countries.
Yeah, okay.
Well, guess what? With all his tweeting back and forth, it's caused confusion in the White House budget office.
Are you surprised?
And so the money for those improvements in those Central American countries has not been dispersed.
Jeez, Matt, come on. One more thing.
Yeah. Now, Kirsten Nielsen,
I can't stand
the
that
Nazi that she is, was down there. Talking about how to improve conditions down there. But Gavin Newsom is actually going.
Yes,
now,
thank
you. And
he's going to do some investigation and figure out and talk to the officials down there of how they can improve the life down there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect.
So, he's...
Because it can't be good for the people who come all the way up from Honduras and then be turned away. I mean, it's
not. But those people are desperate.
Absolutely.
There are people whose lives have been threatened, who are in abject poverty, starvation.
So Gavin Newsom is going to the source and say, what can we do to improve this?
And he's already allocated $25 million to spend in this state to help immigrants, get settled and get taken care of.
Like that, Matt.
And as a funny little side note, Jim, there was an article in today's paper about Customs and Border Patrol hired an illegal immigrant, and he worked for them for 6 years. And he was apparently gung-ho, you know.
Of course.
He got hired on a faked Texas birth certificate.
Yeah.
But now he's claiming that, he was told, he was like 11 when he got to the United States. He was told his whole life that he was a citizen. So,
yeah. Oh, so that's what he's saying. I was told I was a citizen.
Yeah.
It's my family history. Well, Matt, I know that you're probably not too religious, but here's an Ohio man.
Too.
He's given up all food and drink except for beer for Lent, and Lent is you're supposed to give something out.
Yeah.
So he
give
says,
up Republicans.
yeah, thank you. His name is Del Hall, who works at a brewery in Cincinnati. Said he was inspired by the unusual 40-day fast by 17th century Bavarian monks who also fasted on, quote, liquid bread during Lent. I've run a full marathon before, 26.2 miles. I've done big challenges, but this seems very daunting, said Hall. So I'm just curious if I'm up to the challenge.
Ooh.
His belly will be after 40
kidding.
days of drinking nothing but beer.
Yeah.
Beer for breakfast. Breakfast of champions.
Yikes. Part of the fun of beer is the buzz, but if you drink it all the time, every day,
I don't think so.
I don't think you're going to get much of a buzz there.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Hey, Jim.
Yeah, Matt.
George H.W. Bush voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016.
When was that? 2016? How do you know?
Well, there's a tell-all book that's due out here any day now, and previews are saying that, he not only voted for Hillary Clinton, but Barbara Bush said that she, with Trump as president, she couldn't consider herself a Republican anymore.
Yay! And didn't she also say that my heart attack was due to Trump being president?
Yeah, it wasn't actually a heart attack, but heart stress.
Heart stress.
Event she had.
All of us.
And it's like
That's great. Let's shout that from the rafters there.
Yeah. So this is a forthcoming biography, but I thought, she got upset because Trump was like browbeating poor little Jebby Bush during
that's perfect.
It's like, is this karma?
Yeah, that's right. I like that. Perfect.
Oh God. Yeah. So
all right.
Here's
something. 20-somethings after. It's a bad week for people who are 20-somethings, Matt, because a British neuroscientist said that brain studies show that people don't fully grow up until they're in their 30s.
Oh, that long now,
The idea that adulthood begins at 18 or 21 looks increasingly absurd. Well, Matt, I don't know about you, but my brain is still growing. Still forming and developing.
Well, I know my waistline is, but...
That's one thing that goes up and never comes down, Matt. Your age.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. This is words of wisdom from two Mooks and a Mike.
There we go.
Are these words to live by?
Stay tuned, everybody. You'll learn words of wisdom.
Certainly you have another gem there, Jim.
I'll work on it.
Good. Well, okay. So what else? It's kind of, I think we've covered the good, the bad, the ugly.
We have. There is a thing of people in Silicon Valley that are hacking their mortality. Did you hear about this? These are the people that's called biohacking, and these are people who are like the CEOs of major corporations.
The rich, the wealthy.
One poster boy of biohacking is Bulletproof Coffee founder Dave Asprey, who recently turned 45 and is certain he'll live to be at least 180. A doctor extracted stem cells from his bone marrow and injected them in organs and joints throughout his body, a process Asprey intends to repeat twice annually in the belief he's refreshing his body with brand new cells. He takes 100 supplements a day, Matt, and has equipped his British Columbia home with gadgets such as hyperbaric oxygen chamber. I think that Michael Jackson had one of those. And a platform that vibrates 30 times a second to stimulate his muscles. Wow. Also, Oracle's famously arrogant co-founder Larry Ellison says he finds mortality incomprehensible. How about that? And Google's co-founders, along Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, are also investing in ways to extend human life. Tesla's CEO Elon Musk founded Neuralink to develop digital implants in our brains. If we don't use technology to enhance our cognitive abilities, Musk reasons artificial intelligence is destined to conquer humanity. They may save us all, Matt. I'm going to go get my cell rejuvenation shot.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Where's Mark Zuckerberg and all that?
He's just.
I'll tell you where he is.
Zuckerberg
HUD, Housing and Urban Development.
Yeah.
Ben Carson, the most inept head of HUD,
God, but he's a good surgeon. Supposedly.
is actually suing Facebook.
What?
Over continuing housing discrimination.
What? They are? I thought they'd be for it.
Facebook is all about, selling your information to, advertisers and buyers.
Yeah.
And they use algorithms to do that, right?
Right.
And so they've been charged with basically having, letting people buy, perpetrate housing discrimination by weeding out people who can see some ads and targeting ads towards other people so that it's a select market, right?
Wow.
And I find it rather surprising that Ben Carson and Trump's HUD.
Yeah.
But
is fighting against that.
Good. I mean, Facebook needs to be sued on
because Trump's
this.
daddy, the real estate mogul, was doing that discrimination, racist discrimination.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, I am surprised. So it is good. Facebook.
So we're gonna watch that. But Facebook. I mean, it's always like, oh well, we're sorry, and we're gonna fix that. And
let's get rid of our Facebook accounts, man. Let's do it right now.
Mine is done.
Really?
Well, I never had one.
I have 3. I keep
Get
getting
rid of them.
I can't figure out how to do that.
You're just wasting good energy, Jim.
That's right. I never look at them, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, good. Okay.
Hey, Matt, would you give the email address for us?
Yeah, folks. So once again, we want to ask you that if you're listening, if you guys,
or if you're not listening,
yeah,
either one,
we want you to email us. Every one of you listeners, get out your pencil. You're going to send us an email to kpca@pca.tv, as in television, and put in there 2 Mooks and say, I'm a listener.
Or I'm not a listener.
Or I'm not a listener. And we're going to know you're lying to us because if you send us the email, we're smart enough to figure that out, aren't we, Jim?
We are. But also put down your pencil and you have to type it if you're sending an email, because using a pencil to send an email won't work.
See, we're just really techno wizards over here.
You could actually put it in an envelope the old-fashioned way and lick a stamp and stick it on. No, it wouldn't come. You have to have an address.
Well, P.O. Box 2806, Petaluma 94953.
There we go. Okay, so you can do it any way your little heart desires.
Yeah. Yeah, because, we're just curious to know if, what kind of reach we have. We have fun with this. We
do.
Enjoy doing this and like to think we have an audience. But if we don't have an audience,
what's the point? We're just
Jim and I can just do this over beers.
Oh, no, not beers. So unless it's Lent.
Lent.
Then we'll do it over Lent.
Beers for Lent.
Yeah, or a joint, Matt. Or one of those two.
That's right. That's legal now. We can say that.
Yeah, we can. Well, we could say it anyway, even if it wasn't legal, but it's nice to do it.
We won't get in trouble now.
Hey, I have a nice little story, Matt.
Yeah, let's hear this.
Okay. This guy named Dan went to a California car dealership with plans to trade in his 2005 Toyota Scion to buy a new auto. But then he saw another customer walk out crying and ask a salesman what had happened. Dan, he was 49, discovered that Kyla Cooper, a struggling 22-year-old nursing student with 2 jobs, was upset because she couldn't afford a down payment and didn't know how she was going to get to work. Knowing he had to do something, Dan asked the salesman to call Cooper and then offered her his old Scion for free, no strings attached.
Yeah.
The delighted Cooper called the gift the biggest blessing of my life.
Yeah, that's nice.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, that's a good story, Jim. Thank
It was
you.
in Southern California, too. And those people who cast asparagus at Southern Californians, think again.
Aspersions.
Oh, that's what it is?
Asparagus.
All right. I thought it was asparagus.
It's much more efficient to cast aspersions in.
Yeah, if you throw asparagus at me, I'm going to eat it. That's it.
You could put somebody's eye out with that thing.
That's right. That's spear.
Hey, somebody who's been in the news lately is Pete Buttigieg.
Yes.
He's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He's thrown his hat into the presidential race. I don't know. You think he's going to get any traction? People that see him really like what he's out gay. But he says his 2 terms as mayor of South Bend gives him more government experience than either Donald Trump or Mike Pence.
To put together.
Which I think is great. So
I have been following him, Matt, and every time I hear him speak, it's been he's level-headed, he's progressive, and he really is a compassionate person. I would love to see him rise in the polls instead of these superstars.
Yeah, and apparently he's got a lot more real policies that he's fleshed out than, say, Beto O'Rourke.
Right.
Who's appealing to people.
Yeah,
but
there's a background there.
That they're really, doesn't seem to have quite as much of the
a lot of hat, the little cowboy.
Yeah, a lot of hat. So there you go.
Yeah.
So Jim, there's a fundraiser for KPCA coming up on Monday, May 20th. It's going to be at Lagunitas, the infamous Lagunitas. There's going to be performances by The Grain and DJ Syed, and it's going to be at 5:30. Tickets include dinner.
Nice.
And it's going to be catered by Senor Sissig, who I don't know who that is. Adults are $20 in advance, $25 at the door, but that's to support your beloved KPCA local low-power FM radio station.
Not just us, but the entire station.
That's right.
And that's TV and the radio, right?
That's right. And to get your tickets, folks, you're going to go to www.kpca.fm. FM.
Perfect.
All right, there we go.
That's it.
That's it, folks.
All right,
it's
everybody.
2 Mooks and a Mike. Thanks for listening.
everybody.
Send us an email. Let us know that you're out there, and we
Or
will
not out there.
continue to do this.
All right. See you in a week.
Next week.
Bye.